In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to modify the properties of a AutoCAD primitive object and also modify it on a sub-object level as well. I have a box shown here, and I just drew this a moment ago, and you can see if I click on the box to grip select it, it will reveal what I like to call the primary grips for the box, and you can change the size of the box by simply selecting one of these grips and changing the height, the width, or the depth of the object pretty easily. Not difficult to do. You can also access all of that information from Properties Manager too. So here you see is the length, the height, and the width, or the width and the height. And you can simply change the values here as well if you wanted to perfect it maybe. And type in numbers that you'd like to use, or if you wanted to get fancy you could use the calculator and say I want that number times 2 divided by 3. That's exactly what I wanted. Click apply and you'll see the box will change accordingly. But however you modify it's fine for purposes of what we're doing now. Size isn't that important with this thing. Dimensions aren't that important. We're just using AutoCAD as a sketching tool. But what I'd like to do is show you how to transform this box even further. To do that, I'm going to select this thing on a sub-object level. What I'm going to do is hold down my control key, and when you do that and click atop of a face, you'll notice that you'll get a red circular grip in the center of the face area. If you select that grip, then you can actually then move that surface around. And now if I orbit around this object, you'll see that it's no longer a box. It's sort of a trapezoidal rhomboid shape. And I can further select not just faces, but I can also select edges using that technique as well. So if I hold down my control key on my keyboard and left click on an edge, hopefully it will select the edge, but very often it wants to go back and select the faces. So it can be a little bit tricky picking edges. Let me try this edge here. You'll see again it wanted to pick the face. And again it wants to pick the face. So I'm going to do something sneaky here. I'm going to hold down my control key. I'm going to pick outside the box area, making certain that there's no object back here where you see my pick box spinning around right now. And now I'm going to window with an implied window around that one edge. And now you can see, lo and behold, I've got a new type of grip right here, and I can still orbit and things while it's grip selected right here. And if I select that red little small rectangular grip, I can then move just this edge around as I see fit. Okay? I'm going to show you how to use the axial constraints as well. If you pause on top of one of the axial constraints, you'll notice you'll get a green sort of extension line. That shows you a red one here in the case of the Y. That shows you which direction, in blue in the case of Z, which direction you can actually then constrain the movements to. So if I want to move this edge straight up, I can simply left click right now, and as I drag this edge upward, you'll notice that the object changes shape accordingly. So that's how you can select edges, is by being very careful, and if you can't pick it right off the bat like that time I got lucky, you can shift or orbit your view around to the other side of the object so that you can judiciously do an implied window around the edge that you're trying to select. Okay? Now, what about the corners? Those are called vertices. And to select those, I'm going to use a similar technique. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you can actually left click right on the vertice and grab it, although that's not always so easy to do. Instead, if you use that implied window technique, you'll get it right every time. So if I want to grab this vertice, for instance, or vertex, if I hold down my control key, left click above it in an area where there isn't an object in the background, and left click there, you can see that now I have that little circular grip, red grip right there that will allow me to grab just that vertice. So now if I want to move it along my y-axis, I can use this constraint and move it around. And you'll notice too the way the constraints work, no matter which way I move my mouse and cursor, it definitely only moves in the y direction. It's actually taking the y component of the distance on my rubber band, if you will, and using that value to move the object by. So that's how you can actually move objects around and sub-objects for primitives and change the physical properties of a primitive pretty easily just by using that particular technique. And I hope you found that helpful, and you will see more demonstrations in the near future. Oh, someone asked me, how do I have the X, Y, and Z cursors locate, or the identifiers on my graphics cursor, you'll notice, first of all, a couple things about the graphics cursor. You'll notice that it's asymmetrical. That is, that the axes where they meet at the origin are longer in one direction than the other. That's just a visual cue to you that the X is positive in the direction to the left on the screen now, if you will. So the longer section past the intersection of all three of the axes is the positive direction for that particular axial direction. And then the labels are acquired by, I'm going to right click on the command line, go to Options, and under 3D modeling you'll notice there's a checkbox here to show labels in standard crosshairs. If I uncheck that and click Apply, you'll see the labels go away. So if you like to use the labels, you can. If you don't, you don't. But there is rhyme and reason to how the cursors look. The other thing you can do is change the cursor size with the system variable cursor size. Right now it's set to 10. It's usually 5 by default. If you change that to 100, you'll see that your cursors occupy 100% of your screen real estate. Some people prefer to work this way. When I'm working in 3D, I don't so much like 100% cursors. I tend to go for something smaller than that. But when I'm working in 2D, this can be very, very helpful for placing objects. At any rate, I hope you found all that helpful, and look for more in the future.